Welcome to This Is How We Heal with naturopath, herbalist and author Anthea Koulouros. With over 3 decades of clinical experience guiding thousands on their healing journeys, Anthea invites you into honest, heartfelt conversations about what really gets in the way of health and healing and what gently brings us back to ourselves. If you're sick and tired of feeling sick and tired, overwhelmed by wellness noise, or just yearning to feel like yourself again, you're in the right place. This podcast is for anyone feeling burnt out, lost in a sea of symptoms, or simply longing for a deeper connection to their health, their body, and their truth.
Hello and welcome to This Is How We Heal. I'm Anthea Koulouros, a naturopathic clinician, a herbalist, tea maker, writer, and someone who has walked alongside thousands of people on their healing journeys over the past 30 years. This podcast for me has been a long time coming. It was born from pages of a book that I'm writing, also titled This Is How We Heal, but really it was born from the conversations I've never had quite enough time in my clinic with you one-on-one. The ones that deserve space, the ones that go beyond what to eat, what supplement to take, or what lab test results means. I wanted to create this podcast where we could get to explore much deeper the conversations, the ones that we've always wanted to have, but always run out of time. So This Is How We Heal isn't really just a podcast about wellness. It's about what really gets in the way of healing and what helps us come back to ourselves. It's about tiredness behind the tiredness, the questions we carry, the truth that healing is not just about the body, it's about the whole of our being. So I created this podcast for anyone who's feeling sick and tired of feeling sick and tired, like they've tried everything but still don't feel well, burnt out from managing symptoms without deeper answers, lost in a maze of medical advice, wellness trends, and half-truths, disconnected from themselves, longing for a new relationship with their health. So if that's you, you're not alone. You're in the right place. Now let's take a glimpse into the book that has inspired this podcast. This Is How We Heal, a working title, is a holistic approach to healing persistent stress, symptoms, and disease. This is the book I'm writing as we speak. It's a set of considerations collected over 3 decades of practice, meant to support you in discovering what's really behind your symptoms, your fatigue, your discomfort, your dis-ease. It asks what is actually going on beneath the surface. Why don't we heal even when we try everything? And how do we begin again, not just as patients, but as whole people? I share stories, insights, and my own personal journey, one that brought me to the brink of burnout and back to life. It's deeply personal and deeply practical, and this podcast will explore those same themes, often through real conversations, sometimes through solo reflections. But before we go on, I really want to explore the many threads of healing throughout this podcast and in the pages of my book. And it's important that we also revisit the language that we use, because words carry power. And in the world of health and healing, they carry stories, some inherited, some imposed, some deeply internalized. What do we actually mean when we say illness, or disease, or dis-ease, or symptoms, or stress? Because how we name what we're experiencing, how we describe the body, the mind, the soul in distress, shapes how we relate to it. And how we relate to it shapes how we heal. So much of the language we inherit around illness is rooted in fear, shame, blame, or suppression. It assumes that the body is broken, that symptoms are bad, that discomfort should be silenced. But what if we softened our view? What if we listened differently? So let's begin again by redefining these words and reimagining our relationship to them. So, what is illness? Illness is not simply something wrong with you. It's not just a malfunction or a diagnosis to overcome. It's an experience, a lived state of discomfort, fatigue, pain, or confusion. It's the body, or sometimes the spirit, whispering something here needs care, something is out of rhythm. Please slow down and please listen. When we stop blaming the body for breaking down and start seeing illness as a message, something softens. And from that softening, healing becomes possible. Now let's look at disease versus dis-ease. We often hear the word disease used clinically. It's a diagnostic term used to classify, code, and name. But what it often misses is the human experience beneath the diagnosis. That's why I tend to use the word dis-ease more often, because it opens up space for nuance and meaning. So dis-ease, when broken down, literally means a lack of ease. It's a disruption in the natural rhythm of things, in your digestion, in your breath, in your energy, in your relationships, and in your joy. It might show up physically as inflammation, pain, or insomnia, but it might also show up as disconnection, numbness, irritability, burnout, or the simple sense that something just feels off, not quite right. So dis-ease can be physical, yes, but it is also emotional, relational, spiritual, and even ancestral. Sometimes dis-ease arises because we've been in environments that weren't safe. Sometimes it comes from long-held grief or unmetabolized fear, chronic overgiving, or living out of alignment with who we really are. Sometimes it's the body's attempt to protect us, an adaptation that once helped us survive but now prevents us from thriving. So using the term dis-ease allows us to relate to our experiences with curiosity instead of fear. It helps us listen instead of fight, and it makes space for healing that goes far beyond the physical. And what are symptoms? Symptoms are the body's language of expression. They are not a problem. They're simply messengers, signs, or signals. Symptoms are how disease reveals itself. They are how the body, mind, or spirit says, I'm trying to get your attention. A skin rash might be a detox pathway, asking for support. A headache could be your nervous system requesting rest, hydration, or release. Anxiety might be the echo of something unresolved, past, or present. Bloating might be how the gut expresses overwhelm, dysbiosis, which is bacterial imbalance, or emotion. And exhaustion might not be laziness, but a signal that you've been in survival mode for too long. We're often taught to fear symptoms, to silence them with medication, override them with willpower, or push through them in the name of productivity. But symptoms don't always need to be fixed right away. Sometimes they just need to be understood. Because when we stop trying to eliminate symptoms at all costs and instead ask, what are you trying to tell me? We step into a deeper, more wiser form of healing. Now, that doesn't mean that we suffer. And if we're in a lot of pain, of course, we may need to medicate. We may need to soothe in some way. But if there is some space in between, what are you trying to tell me? And let's also talk about stress, because when we speak of it so often, I think that it's lost its weight. But stress isn't just what happens when we're too busy or overworked. It's not just an emotional state, it's a physiological response. Stress is what happens when the demands placed on you, whether they're physical, emotional, relational, or spiritual, exceed your capacity to respond with ease. It's what happens when you've been stretched too far for too long without the chance to repair. And stress isn't just mental, it's cellular. It affects your gut, your hormones, your immune system, your sleep, and your mood. And when left unacknowledged, it becomes the backdrop of your entire life, a low, constant hum, until the body, no longer able to compensate, begins to speak more loudly through symptoms, through pain, and through illness. In this way, stress is both a cause and a symptom. It feeds dis-ease, and it is dis-ease. So when we begin to honor stress not as a weakness, but as a signal, we create the conditions for resilience, regulation, and repair. So here in this podcast and in the stories, reflections, and teachings I'll share with you, we begin again. We begin with a new relationship to illness, one not rooted in fear or urgency, but in curiosity. One that doesn't try to control or silence the body, but meets it with compassion. We don't ask, how do I get rid of this? Fix me. I wish this would just go away. We ask, what is it trying to show me? This is the foundation of holistic healing. Not a war on the body, not a fight, but a conversation with it. A gentle inquiry, it's a remembering, and it's a restoration of ease. And so with that, we should also explore healing. So for me, holistic healing isn't just about fixing or curing, and it's not about perfecting or ticking wellness boxes. It's about the return to wholeness. It's remembering who we are beneath the pain. It's the gathering up of our parts of ourselves that have been left behind in survival mode, the ones that have been most forgotten. The you that never felt safe, or the you that was silent, the you that adapted to keep going but longs to come home. Healing is about building capacity in your nervous system so that your body no longer has to live in a state of threat. It's about creating safety physically, emotionally, energetically. It's about reclaiming rhythm, nourishment, and rest. It's about honoring the seasons of your life rather than pushing against them. Healing doesn't always announce itself. It's not always so dramatic or visible from the outside. More often, healing happens really quietly, in the pause before you react, in the breath that softens your chest, in the walk you take to feel the ground beneath you, in the tear that finally escapes and lets loose, in the kind thought that you offer yourself without needing to earn it. It can be really slow. It can be sacred. It can be cyclical. It's not always linear, but it is something very deeply personal. And even when it's invisible, it changes everything. So often I thought, why now with this podcast? Why now with this book? Apart from its legacy piece, it's something that I've been thinking about and working in the space for such a long time. But I think now more than ever, and it's what I've seen, is that we are living in a time where people are more disconnected, overstimulated, exhausted more than I've ever seen before. And the stresses are everywhere. Environmental toxins, sedentary lives, disordered eating, constant noise, pressure from devices, medical systems that treat symptoms in silos. So we're going to explore fragmentation and reductionism. Wellness industries that sell more overwhelm in the name of health. People are checking all the wellness boxes and still feeling unwell, and it's what I see every single day in my clinical practice. They do yoga, they drink their green juice, they're taking supplements and still feeling exhausted. Why? Because we're not going deep enough, because we're not addressing the root causes, because we're not looking at the whole person. That's why I wrote the book, or writing the book. And it's why I'm here now with this podcast, to have those deeper conversations, to walk with you through that complexity, but to also offer space, language, and perspective, and a clear path forward. So in the future episodes of This Is How We Heal, we'll dive into a wide range of topics. Sometimes focus on a specific illness or symptom, exploring it through a holistic lens. Other times we'll unpack the latest food trend, a supplement fad, or a hidden factor contributing to how we feel. We'll explore what so often gets missed, the root causes and the real barriers to healing. That might mean talking about nervous system regulation, trauma, both personal and inherited, toxins from everywhere, or sometimes ancestral imprints, the stuff that we inherit, whether through genetics, we'll explore epigenetics, for instance. All that quiet ache that comes from living out of sync with your values and needs. Sometimes it'll just be me reading from what I've written thus far in the book, sharing clinical insights, or reflecting on patterns I'm seeing in practice and in community. And I'm hoping at times I'll be joined by really special guests, fellow practitioners, thinkers, creatives, storytellers who carry wisdom from other realms of healing. So what are we going to explore together much more deeply is healing, not just treatment, conversations about what truly gets in the way of wellness, from toxic overload to cultural narratives, insights into the invisible emotional ancestral roots of illness, of course, naturopathic wisdom, ancient traditions, real life stories from my patients, obviously with consensus from my own healing and from the world around us, and tools and practices to support you where you are right now. We'll be having honest discussions about our current medical and wellness systems as well, and perhaps most importantly, a steady reminder that you are not broken and that you are not alone. We'll always circle around the same invitation to come home to yourself, to listen more deeply, to tend to what's being ignored, and to rediscover that healing is not just possible, it's your birthright. So, if this episode spoke to you, if something in it made you exhale, pause, or feel seen, please share it with someone you love, someone who might be walking through their own season of exhaustion, uncertainty, or quiet searching. Healing is not meant to be walked alone, and sometimes a single conversation can be a lifeline. And if you're seeking support, whether you're navigating persistent symptoms or craving deeper energy or simply wanting to reconnect with your body and inner wisdom, I'd be honored to walk beside you. So you can visit me in person at my naturopathic clinic and apothecary, which is called Apotheca by Anthea, or join our online sanctuary, our membership called the Staying Healthy Together Club, where each month we gather around seasonal wellness protocols, food as medicine guides, live Q&As and conversations just like this one, where I think it's the place of nourishment, remembrance, and gentle transformation that I've always wanted to create. So until next time, listen deeply, rest often, honor the quiet parts of what you are, and ready to heal.
If this episode spoke to you, your healing journey doesn't have to end here. Join Anthea in her dedicated online community, the Staying Healthy Together Club, a space for real conversations and holistic health education with trusted resources. We'd love to see you there.